how do we approach sex? Like, what do we look to get out of sex? Preston, you made a great comment that was very to the point, that you love sex. I love sex. We all do. But what are we trying to get out of sex? What do we look to sex for? Because I think that the initial answer that, maybe even me 5 years ago would have been like, to bust a nut, to feel good, but it's so much deeper than that shit. So like, what do y'all, if y'all feel comfortable sharing, what do y'all approach sex for? Like, what do you hope to gain out of it in terms of the whole experience?
For me, I'm still in that journey. I don't know,
as we all are,
what I'm trying to get from sex. I don't have it often. I don't have it frequently. I mean, it's by myself a lot. But I think for me, like, I look at it as just like you becoming one with somebody that you value and you trust, and you are able to feel comfortable to explore every peak of your body whatsoever. Like I'm wanting to have that experience. I'm wanting to feel vulnerable and comfortable enough to go on this orgasmic journey in itself with somebody. So sex to me is like it's like a privilege. It's a journey. It's a reward. It's something that should be valued, respected, and like, just be something that's like out of this world with like whoever you feel comfortable with, yourself, somebody else. But it's like something I think that like I'm still trying to grapple with regularly, because
that's
like
real.
Something I'm like, it's the way that it's been deemed. Sometimes I'm always like, is that okay? Is that right? But then I'm like, no, if I want it, I want it. If I like it, I like it. So it's something I'm definitely like on a journey with, but I definitely want to be able to explore every like body or euphoria that comes with sex.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's valid. Thank you for saying that, because a lot of times I think, especially when it does come to
Get
sex.
the mic again.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, there we go.
A lot of times when we talk about our positions on sex, it's almost as if society forces us to need to have an answer, as opposed to like, I don't know being okay, right? For me personally, sex is very spiritual. But it's also a space where it's also very eclectic, right? Because there's some times where I don't want to go that deep, and I just want to like stay in this creative space. Or it may be a space of this week has been very challenging from a perspective of my mental, and so I don't really want to think about anything for a little while. I want somebody else to take the lead. It could be the opposite, where sometimes it's like I haven't really had the space to do anything that feels like I've led this week. And so I want to lead right now. And so it's very eclectic for what it means to me personally.
Yeah, I love that breakdown of like, even sometimes I don't want to lead.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you, babe?
Yeah.
Do you?
Which from a
go off.
Yeah, from a conversation around sex with men, I think across the board, regardless of orientation, like that's a really, really interesting point. Preston, to even what you were saying with regards to the top and bottom conversation, right? Like the brothers, the queer brothers that I've spoken to that usually like we really get into good dialogue are the ones that have that point of I've never been penetrated. I only give dick.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, when I hear it, it's like, really? So y'all are dealing with the same level
thing.
of like
It's the same
control
thing.
and power dynamics?
Yeah.
Because, we'll have conversations as cisgender men with women around like, you don't really never initiate. I'm always the aggressor, but you want me to be sensitive and caring. Like, how about you come care for me for a little while and let me, experience something.
And with patriarchy is, how do I express to this woman that I need you to initiate from me?
That's right.
I need you to do that.
I mean, that goes into what is being shown. Like sex and porn, it was always male dominated. Like it was never like when I would watch porn, like it was just always like the man just penetrating the woman. Like it wasn't really like she had anything to value from it, it was like, this is for the man, this is what you need, and this is what I want, right? So like I know recently there's been like porn that is more like female centered, about like
feminist porn
and all of those things, but like sex has always been just a male thing, right? And when you ask for your female partner to be the lead in that conversation, that opens up a lot. When we start to have more conversations about what I want behind closed doors with your partner, I think that is like a groundbreaking start to how that conversation can go. I have a lot of female friends that have said they've ate their partner's ass, they've licked it, they fingered, pegged, whatever the case may be. That's their business. That's what they like. That's what they enjoy. But I think the conversation just is like being okay with that intimacy with somebody and not feeling like you have to, like, I mean, if you want to talk about it, you can talk about it all day long. Just understand that there's going to be people that are still immature and ignorant and not wanting to like feel what their whole body feels like, that's your part. Like if you don't want to know what it feels like to be like on a whole nother level, you gonna keep it that way.
And I think to a degree, I think it's important in this conversation just to name that I know we're all similarly on the same page about like feeling the sensation on all of our body, our dick, our ass, wherever. But if you just aren't there yet, that's okay.
It's okay too.
I think with this conversation, it's just about like knowing that it's okay to be interested and to ask for that from your partner and be like, yo, let me just ask it. And I think with trust, with intimacy, you will have the space to do that. Preston, what about you in terms of like, what do you hope to gain out of a sexual experience? What do you look for, you know, as far as sex providing you in your life?
Yeah, I think that answer has shifted for me, frankly. Because the truth is, like, I wish I had this like explorative answer, but it's to have sex.
And that's okay,
right? And I think, and ultimately, right, like I think that shifts depending on like, I mean, right now, right, I should say, like in a monogamous relationship, it's just been different, right? Like what the give and the get, the pleasure, like it's different, right? Because there is some different attachment there, right? But even when I was not like in a relationship, it was to nut. I mean, honestly, right? And I think we are so uncomfortable sometimes just saying that, but the truth is there's nothing wrong with it. As long as there's consent, there's pleasure, right? If all of those things are present, which is the problem, right? Because many times it may not be. For me, there are moments where I think I've shared this earlier, but like have had bad sex. And then I was like, I'm not having bad sex ever again. Right? Like I am going to figure out, there's times I've literally had to kick people out. Because I'm just like, this is not what I enjoy, and you're obviously not trying to make me enjoy it. So my door's there. Have a good night, right? And it's awkward in those moments. I've also felt free and liberated enough to say that, right? But previously, I would not do that. I would probably just go through it, right? And I would be miserable going through it. But, you know, I will say moving to DC 10 years ago taught me a lot. Because like the way people explore, I'm from the Midwest. We never would have had these conversations in Ohio, ever.
Would have never.
Ever, right? Like, and so I think about that. Then I moved to North Carolina. Definitely not happening, right? So DC taught me a lot about men, taught me a lot about Black men and really what it means to explore myself. And that's something I've realized is true for a lot of like queer Black men that I know in DC, right? Because it's a lot of us. So with it being a lot of us, we have a lot more spaces to talk. Sometimes those spaces are not the most healthy, and sometimes you have a beautiful moment out of them. Yeah. And in those spaces, I've been able to really explore and have these open conversations around like the joys of sex.
Yeah. I think one thing I've realized about myself is that, like you said, I mean, for me, earlier when I started having sex, it was just to simply get a nut off. But I know now it's just like, I know, or I've learned that it's always been for me about an intimate moment and a connection and a chance to just really let go and like sometimes take charge, but sometimes let go and somebody catches me. Like, and in that moment, I can just feel like really natural and kind of like carnal in a way and just like, yeah, I have some anxiety outside of here, but like I just feel connected. I feel safe sometimes. But it's also kind of that double-edged sword of how much am I pouring in sex that I should be exploring out of sex sometimes, which is sometimes a tricky situation to navigate. Go ahead.
It's a like cover up. Like sex is like a space that like allows, it should be a place for people to feel vulnerable and intimate and creative and like feeling and all of that. But sex has been something that just feels like it's a job. You know, you have to do that. And I think that that's the problem with like sex now is like, it's not, well, sex, I think, is now people are starting to have the conversation and exploring themselves more if they want to. But I think that like sex before was just like something that just was, you just did it, you know,
something
you just
to do.
did it. You do it like boom, but it's really a vulnerable thing, you know, it's something that you are doing that some people will see, some people won't see, some things that like you uncover about yourself and all that. But I think that like sex like just wasn't always, it wasn't like not valued, it wasn't important, and it was like, this is the time I get to be intimate. This is the time I get to be with myself, like with another person or myself. Like I can do whatever I want in this space and feel with consent totally comfortable. But I think that still there's these pressures and these anxieties that come in, like, am I doing this right? Are they feeling good? Like, how am I feeling?
Are my abs right? Like I didn't work out a little bit.
What are they feeling? It's like, just relax.
But you mentioned a good point about sex feeling like a job, because so much about sex is the performance.
Yeah.
It is that I got to make my partner come. I got to make sure I don't get soft. I got to be on rock the whole time.
And come too quickly.
You can't come too quickly. So it does become a job. You got to hit these check marks. And it's like, it's so much of that takes us out of like what actually good sex can be, because we're still trying to perform and live up to like this ideal image of what a black man should be in bed, when it's like you don't have to do any of that shit. You have to figure out what feels good for you, what feels good for you and your partner, and just start there. And I know I've had to think about like, what does good sex mean for me? Now it's like, and I'm curious for y'all, what does good sex look like for y'all? What does it mean for y'all? And does good sex have to end in an orgasm every time?
No.
Well,
come on, Mr.
I'm gonna let you know.
The third time.
I'm gonna let you know.
So
come on now.
That's what I was gonna say. So from a conversation of orgasm for a man equaling ejaculation, no. From a conversation of orgasm equaling body pleasure, every time. I'm not finna do it if I'm not pleased and that person's not pleased. Because at that point, it's a one-way conversation, one-way communication as opposed to a conversation. And for me, that's, if I were to say, what is sex? Sex is communication. And so there are some times when you're talking to somebody and it feels like you're talking to a brick wall. There's other times where you're talking to somebody and it's like, you see me. That's sex.
Niggas want to be seen.
That's so true.
And so for me, that's the biggest piece to the puzzle in that regard, is like, are we communicating? Are you hearing me? Am I hearing you? And when sex is good, you don't have to say much. I mean, you can, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can start
in the
talking
moment.
some shit. But like, your bodies will start to tell you where to go. Similar to dance, right? If you've ever danced with somebody and the beat changed, y'all change what you do. It's the same in sex. If you feel the rhythm change and you kind of nudge,
and you're paying attention
and you're
to the
paying
rhythm,
attention, right? But that's
orgasm
where
gap.
the two side comes in there, right? Because there may be that gap in time where, like, if somebody is getting to their pleasure zone or their height of pleasurable intensity, it's not time for you to ask for anything. It's time for you to listen. And then you move through that. But can it be reciprocated? Like, are you done now? And now I just gotta take agency for all that's gonna happen after this. And I say that honestly in spaces when we're talking about cisgender heterosexual.
That happens in ours
with men and women, because like
I'm really laughing at a tweet I saw.
we understand that no matter what we do, like we're not gonna ejaculate back to back in the way that a woman can like increasingly orgasm. You see what I'm saying? So you might get to that point where a woman has orgasm 5, 6, 7 times, and now she tired. And you put in the work to hold your stuff back, and I was like, but can you take care of me real quick? And that's where the communication for me starts to fall off, because I shouldn't have to say that.
I think it's interesting though, because I think one thing I've reshaped around sex is like, I know is like, how much am I communicating to my partner before we even have sex? Because it's just like the performance, the job aspect of it. Okay, we here, let's get it in. It's like, I barely even know you, which I've definitely had a lot of like one night casual joints, and they can be fun, but at the same time, it's like, I know that my casual sex has not come anything close to like if I've built some intimacy and trust and communication and comfort before we even stepped in the bedroom. And I know to your point, Preston, now, like, I don't want to go back to the one night stand bullshit if I know that like, okay, let's just talk about this shit first. I don't have to worry about like if my abs ain't on 10, or if like, you know, I might get soft early than I want to. And like, if that trust is there, I know for me going forward, being single now, I really want that and kind of need that. Cause I don't have to worry about like, damn, like I'm bald now. So if my shit look kind of crazy, is she gonna cut it off? Like, it's like, all right, sir, you got the shade. Like, so I know for me that like good sex now has to be trust and intimacy built in, and that comfort before I even can like be in that space. So what is, in terms of good sex, I'm curious what else is coming up for us.
That's definitely something that's important with me. I have bad anxiety. So like going into casual sex, I've had so many moments where it's like, I don't know what to do. We didn't talk about this. We didn't, what is it? And just sometimes I don't make the mark. Sometimes I do. I'm like, whatever. But to me, it's like, yeah, like you said, it's like we are communicating. We are both on the same wave. We are both understanding where our peaks and our valleys, like just being like comfortable in our bodies and in that space, and both of us, if we want to get off, you know, at the end, if we don't, if you do and you just want to see me and I want to see you, like I just think that it just being a fluid motion is something I really enjoy. Is like there's no fear in this space. There's no like thoughts that are racing like throughout this whole thing. It's like I'm like meditating. I meditate a lot. I'm mindful. It's like a mindfulness space. Like you're being really present in that moment, and when you can actually do that, with sex, you're like enjoying every sensation that you're feeling, what you are hearing, what you are seeing, what you like, all of that. But if you're like in so many other spaces, it's not helpful. So that's what I think of when I want good sex. Is like it's a game, not a game, but like it's like we're like in
Playtime.
it. Yeah, it's playtime. We're having like a ball. And I don't want it to stop.
Yeah, I really love the presence and communication, because there are times I remember having sex and I'm like, did I send that email earlier?
Right, that's not what you need to be at. No,
Mine just starts wandering.
I'm like, did my crock pot? I think
take that chicken out.
So it's hard because I realized I wasn't enjoying it, right? And I wasn't present because I knew I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
And there are other times where it's like I'm here in this moment, right? But I'm sorry, the joke, the tweet I was laughing at when we were having this conversation was something that you said, because I remember somebody tweeted something like, "You better hope we nut at the same time because I ain't about to sit here looking."
Yo.
what we about to do?
And it's
What you about to do?
It's funny because it's so fucked up. But it is funny because I was like, dang, some people do take a long time to nut. And I'm like, dang, this is annoying me, actually. Yeah. But it's because we weren't communicating, right? Because when you are communicating with your partner, whoever the partner is, or multiple partners for that matter, you should be able to tell something, right? Something is off. There's a reason why someone may be taking a little bit longer than you want. But I really don't think I've thought about the presence. So I really appreciated that framing, actually.
And one thing, earlier in the pandemic, attended this virtual workshop. Shout out to Mask Off in DC. Great organization of men and male socialized folks kind of breaking down patriarchy. And they had a sex workshop. And one of the biggest takeaways that I received was that, I forgot who mentioned it, so I can't give them personal credit, but they talked about how they started shifting their ideas around my pleasure versus his pleasure or her pleasure versus like our pleasure. Yeah. Like in this moment. And like, you can get off, I can get off, but like, how are we both feeling? How can we both create like a mutually pleasure experience? So I think that's one thing that I've tried to stick with me in terms of like, okay, I can pretty much know that I'm gonna get mine, and I can feel confident enough that I can get my partner off. But like, how are we both creating kind of mutual pleasure? And I thought that was really, really dope.
That's powerful.
Yeah. It's interesting. Talking about sex a lot. Have you ever felt completely sexually free with somebody?
Yep.
In terms of all your insecurities? Okay, talk about it.
Right.
I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I'm there yet.
I will say this.
Completely free.
I started having sex my senior year of high school. Prior to that senior year, everyone thought I was having sex, right? So when it started for me, I realized that, everybody was just waiting on me to catch up. And I experienced a lot of women pursuing me sexually. And it was like, is I'm fucking on my forehead? Like, what happened all of a sudden? But it was crazy for me that year. And so I learned a lot in my initial experiences with sex that have carried me till this day with regards to like my amount of agency with what I know how to pay attention to and curate. And so in the spaces where I've had the deep connections or the ability to communicate, like I take it seriously and I don't play no games with it. It's like, listen, I'm gonna lead you this way, right? Okay, you ready to lead? And I will literally treat it like salsa or like merengue, where like I might not be doing a lot of movement, but I'm doing a hell of a lot of directing. Yeah. Simply because I want to put the person that I'm interacting with in a position to be free. And when we're talking about, for me, the masculine feminine dynamic, the feminine is freedom in that sense. So the more I can make you feel comfortable, the more I can make her like understand that this is a safe space, she finna give me everything and anything I need. And so absolutely, that agency for me came at a young age, and I've cultivated it and got better at it. So like, to Preston, to your point, I really don't do bad sex. Yeah. Like I rebuke that demon. I do not do bad sex.
Devery, I know when I asked the question, you were kind of like, free.
Yeah.
Free-ish.
I have not. I think
I'm right there with you. So,
people I think are still looking at me to be this type of person for them, and I'm like, that girl, that's not me. Like, it's not me all the time. Like I cannot. So I think that's been a pressure.
What more do you want from me? I'm human.
What more do you want? Like I've had partners that have not been able to do what I want them to do to me. And I think that's where I've always had the problem and the issues of like, if I want you to eat my ass, if I want you to do all these other things to me and you don't want to do that, it's just like, all right, what's next? Like, because I'm at that point, I'm not right. At that point, I'm just not attracted to. Like, we're not on the same wave. We will never have like joyful sex, meaningful sex, because I'm going to never feel satisfied. So I've always had that's always been my experience, and that's something I don't want anymore. So I am waiting on that moment to have like the sex that y'all have had, but right now it is not that right now. But I said I'll give it to myself.
I appreciate you being transparent about just where you are in your journey.
Yeah.
So I think there is like, as black men, it's like, oh, you got to be slinging the best dick. You got to be getting the best.
I mean, now I know. Listen, I didn't say. Now I know what I can do. I know what I can give you.
Right.
I would just be transparent. I know what I can give you, but when it's your turn, it's like, no, I don't do that.
But use that same at least my in those spaces, like use that same agency.
Yeah.
If you know what you can give, then that means you know what you deserve.
Yeah.
And you create that well before you get to the space.
That's a whole other conversation.
And
that's another conversation that I'm still working on, is putting myself in these predicaments where they ain't gonna do what you want.
Yeah. Is it hard? Because I think
absolutely.
Yes. I think it's like,
not easy. Yeah.
It's like we're talking about it again from a very like high theoretical level, but like there's times when it's like sex is on the table, but do I want to have sex?
I have.
Or do I want to be touched?
Literally have a story about.
Do I want to have sex, or do I want to just kiss this woman? Do I want to have sex, or do I just want to get some head, or just want to give some head? And I think I've been asking myself those questions about like, I'm kind of horny, but I really feel like taking my clothes off and having sex and going through this whole ritual.
Yeah.
But like, nah.
I mean, it's low-key a process.
It is a whole process.
Especially,
a whole process.
especially for some communities more than others. So, so what I can say is, for me, for anyone, like if you just even looked at my Instagram, like I will have pictures with shirts off, like bathing suits, and I think like started to have better sex when I started to reconnect with actually loving my own body.
Talk about that shit, please.
Because I've always grown up, I've always had like thicker thighs, a stomach, and I can't claim fat. I think that's a politic that I'm not comfortable with taking, like actually ownership from other people. But I can say that I am not a stereotypical body type for a lot of community, right? And what they find desirable oftentimes. But I find myself fine as fuck. And so the second I will look in the mirror every day in the shower and be like, damn, this stomach is stomaching.
Come on,
like,
stomach.
This is doing something, right? Oh. And it's to the point where now I don't even want to lose weight. I don't even want to like have my...
How did you get to that point, and you really making my transition smooth as fuck, so thank you. I'm like...
Appreciate you.
What makes brothers feel sexy? I'm really curious about that question, because I think it's like... It's not really a thing about sex. It's about performance, about posture. And I think you named like, oh, I look good. Yeah. I feel good. So like, you can continue on your point, but I'm also curious, like, what makes you feel sexy?
Yeah. Do you know the first time I've really said I've felt sexy was when I wore like these short shorts when I was in Afro punk years ago.
Yes.
And I was like, damn. Like, I felt fine, right? Like, and of course, like, you deal with, like, homophobic comments, like, you know, getting to places, even in DC, right? Like, you know, you have to be really brave and bold to be, like, a black gay man, especially depending on where you are and what you're wearing. And, you know, for me, it just my confidence, the way I felt and how I looked, it overshadowed everything else. I was walking down the street and I remember just hearing stuff, and I'm just like, they're not talking to me because they say my name, right? Like, so I'm like, and obviously like these thighs are threatening you for some respect. So hopefully you get in touch with your masculinity and, you know, understand that actually you probably are interested, and let that be what it's gonna be. But I realized too, there's such like this deep seated like homophobia that I rejected, right? I was like, I'm rejecting this in this moment because I feel good. So, you know, in short, it's what I'm wearing sometimes, right? That's why I'm mad this rain is happening this weekend. Yeah. I wanted my thighs out all weekend. But,
Summer's coming. But
you know, it's going to be a time.
It's going to be a time. Devery, what about you? What makes you feel sexy?
I agree. I definitely, it's like what I feel like when I feel comfortable when I'm wearing what I like. If my skin is glowing, my hair is on. I'm bald too as well.
Talk about
my beard is glistening. All of that stuff. I think it's just ultimately just like feeling like confident. Like nobody can like say anything to me. And I think that just came with a lot of like therapy, a lot of like self-reflecting, self-actualization, and like understanding like I'm not going to be perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. What is that actually? And just like having like in those intimate conversations with myself. I love just like getting to know me. Like I love having those type of moments. So it's just like really spending a lot of time with myself, and then like looking in the mirror and just saying like, you a bad bitch. Like you look good. Like the body is right. You there. What's going on? What you mad about? You're not gonna be this person that's like at the gym. I hate the gym. Like I run. Thank you. I just like knowing what I'm comfortable in and what I'm acceptable with is something that's like just constantly repeating that to myself. And like when you go out in our community, people will say whatever they want, but if you hold your head up high and just don't give a fuck, it will go like they won't say anything to you because they want that response. But it's definitely like just practicing like self-love and just like continuously like figuring out what you like and what you don't like, and just like being so authentic in that. Like once you are authentic in who you are and who you want to be, whatever somebody says or whatever you do, you're going to be like proud of. And like what they say that's negative or positive, you're going to take that with whatever you feel. So it's just like loving me and practicing what I like. Yeah.
It's a complex question for me, because most of my life I've walked in many different worlds, right? I was an athlete, but I was also a nerd, right?
Same.
I was a comic book junkie, right? But I was also like the dude that grew up in a predominantly like hyper masculine black neighborhood where niggas just fought every day. So I'm used to identifying my identity and how people receive me in the groups in which I'm trying to move in and out of. So when it came to my body, it was always extremely transitional, right? When I was playing sports, it was like, I got to be in the gym. I got to hit these reps. I got to run faster. When I was in academic spaces, it was, I needed to cultivate my mind to feel attractive.
Yeah.
It wasn't really until I started to take more ownership of the relationship with my body being healthy, right? And I don't just mean working out, but I mean what I eat, how I sleep, how I engage with my breathing, like just certain things that I learned through tons of different access to spaces, where eventually it was like, but Courtney, what do you care about? What feels good to your body, clothing wise, aesthetically, going through time periods where working in corporate America, you had to have the freshest suit. The shoes had to be sharp. The belt had to be nice. The shirt had to be tailored. But it's like, but the way this belly set up, like I don't like pants that like curtail my lower body region. And I don't like ties at all. Yeah. So for me, it got to a point where I had to start listening to my body and understanding that the first step for me towards having a sense of sexiness about myself was that I had to feel it internally. I didn't feel bloated, right? Because I ate the right things. I didn't feel mentally drained because I drank too much just because I was trying to be socially inclusive, right? And as that time went on, it got to the point to where y'all were talking about, to where like now my community reflects my sense of self. And so the women that I find attractive find me attractive, as opposed to me pursuing women that I have pursued from a societal perspective, or in reality, like they don't really want somebody like me and I don't really want them. You know what I'm saying? Or being around brothers where it's like, y'all niggas really don't want to bang with me. I'm trying to be like y'all. Let me go find my tribes. And so that's probably what I would say was the result, was having a better relationship with my body produced better magnetism for what tribes I was a part of. And so I was attracting what I was reflecting. And so my sexiness became the sexiness of the tribe. And now we all mirror images of each other out here looking bad as fuck.
Listen.
Yeah, you have to spend time with yourself. I think that with this whole conversation and just like the narrative, is like the more you spend time with yourself and the more that you start to practice what you preach and what you believe, your outcome of like what is happening around you will be so different. Like you will not give any like fucks what is happening around, because you have taught yourself, you know what you want, you know what you're putting out, you know what you like, you know what you don't like. I think a lot of men don't do that. No. Like we do not spend time. We find there's so many distractions for us. When we are together, we don't talk about how we're feeling. We don't talk sports or women. I'm like, I can't relate on that, but like I can respect, I respect women, but it's like, we don't have those conversations and we don't like grow. And that's the problem, is we're very stagnant as like beings sometimes. And I think that when we start to cultivate like this space and these platforms, it's the importance of what do I want, you know, not what does he want, what does this group want, what do I want, and how does that help me navigate everything else around me. And I think that's the start to these conversations being like iconic, is like that self-worth and self-learning and all of that is like that it takes to have.
And you mentioned, you took the words out of my mouth in terms of spending time with ourselves.
Yeah.
And like in a space that's separate from shame, separate from judgment.
Yes.
So if you're just with yourself, block out all the noise. If I'm masturbating by myself, what happens if I fondle my arm?
Right.
What happens if I just be conscious with my breathing?
Yes.
What happens if I play with my balls a little bit by myself?
Yeah.
What happens if I go underneath my balls? Like what happens?
Right. Yeah.
There's no shame right here. It's just me and me.
Right. Yep.
Me, myself, and I. Like what happens if I
gonna check
actually
you, boo?
talk about it? Thank you. If you
It's me.
really just sit with yourself, it's like you realize that, oh, the world didn't fall. The sky is still there. That actually felt good.
Yeah.
I actually want to do that shit again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what scares people, I think.
Oh, okay.
And
What's
also,
next?
Right?
Okay.
And now
Exactly.
I know how to communicate because I know what it is. So if I like this to be touched right before I orgasm, next time I'm in it, I'm be like, hey, baby, touch right here.
Right.
You can communicate it because you've done the work.
Yeah.
It's largely about doing the work. Like we talked about sex being work. Yes, and work on yourself first.
Yeah. But I think communicating has to come after you already get over this own fear of what that can mean, right? Because when you say that, I'm thinking about like people's first interactions with realizing they enjoyed something that they were told to not enjoy. Right? It's like, oh my God, I wasn't supposed to do that or like it, right? So what does that actually mean? How are you actually bringing up your own trauma, right? How are you going to actually overcome that trauma and then communicate that accordingly? Yeah. So that is the thing too. I think that's how we get to fear, right? Communication happens, presence happens, but there is a fear attached to pleasure, right? Especially when it's not reflective of what society tells you should enjoy.
Yeah, it's almost like there's like a fear of, oh, that was too much.
Right. Yeah, it was
I
too
have
good.
to,
Too much
I have
good.
to reel it back.
You know how like usually actually when so many good things happening, you're ready because
like,
you know something negative is going to happen,
I get
right?
no, that's real as hell. I get anxious.
That's it.
This
Like, there's
day
too
was
much
this
good.
day was too good. I'm just like,
Yeah.
the sun is hitting too right. I got the best meal in me. I just had sex. I gotta slow down.
It's like
But
too
that's
many good
My
days.
body is like, okay, that's a little okay. Yeah, so it's
That's
interesting.
why a lot of the spaces when you're talking about what I would consider proper sex education tend to always deal with a lot of breathing techniques.
Yeah.
Because if you're feeling anxious, even from a perspective of in normal life, breathing is going to be the thing that starts to bring it back into a place of acceptance.
Your breath.
If you're in a space of like new sexual exploration and it's like, this is too good to be true, I'm feeling
Yep.
you just gotta breathe because we take breathing for granted as if it's just something that we naturally do.
Yeah.
Breathing is not natural. Breathing is learned. It's one of the first things we learn how to do. So taking it back to breathing is taking it back to somewhat like the first real thing we do as human beings. And it almost always provides an environment to calm us down.
Yeah.
At least a little bit, or just at least give the moment of calm to exist to then have the choice of like, nah, I'm still kind of anxious as fuck. Like this ain't gonna work for me right now.
That is the very thing my therapist talks about all the time.
Breathing?
Right? Because it's your natural like fight or flight response,
Absolutely.
right? So when you actually are nervous, you start to panic and breathe a little bit hot, like more and more rapid.
Quicker. Yep.
And so she always says like, stop, realize you're in a safe space, and then breathe, right? And then you can start to really connect and be present again.
Yeah.
And I've really appreciated that because I don't think I've ever realized when I was doing this or like tapping,
Right.
I'm like, oh, I must be nervous.
That's
Or I'm-
it.
It's,
right.
I love how we're kind of almost closing on getting back to you, getting back to who we are, because you could be with a partner who is so supportive, who wants you to be free. But if you haven't done that work to just enter the space to be free, you're never going to feel like you're enough. You're always going to feel like, oh, she came, but she ain't come 5 times.
Right.
She said he said it was great, but it probably wasn't that great. And I think if like if we collectively and also we individually get to a place where like, I'm enough, I'm good.
Yeah.
No matter how I show up. If I come early, maybe next time I won't.
Yep.
Yeah.
If I go soft, well, maybe what I ate shouldn't eat that. And it's like, if I just get to a place where I am enough no matter how I show up, and if my partner sees me the same way,
Amen.
I can't lose.
Yeah.
Can't lose.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the truth.
So my notes are on the floor, so I don't know. I don't know if I had more questions. So I'm just going to say that was a great conversation.